Welcome to NYNJPA Weather. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino, and we have a lot to talk about with this rainstorm that is going to produce some significant flash flooding throughout the entire northern mid-Atlantic. So let's get right to it. This is the water vapor satellite picture as of 9 a.m. And what I have circled here is the primary disturbance that is going to drive this major rainstorm. Now, notice out in the Atlantic I have a big H. This is our upper level ridge. And this ridge is important because it's going to act kind of like a roadblock for the disturbance that's in the Mississippi River Valley. And as a result, this upper level disturbance will move towards the Tennessee River Valley, but then will be forced to move north towards the St. Lawrence River Valley. And that's really important because that means that all of the moisture in the Atlantic and in the Gulf of Mexico will be pulled up the coast and then driven right into the northern Atlantic, specifically the New Jersey coast and eastern Pennsylvania. Now I say specifically because locations like eastern Long Island and eastern Connecticut will actually only see about 1 to 2 inches of rain. I know I say only, but compared to what we're going to be expecting for locations further to the west, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rain, you relatively have lucked out on this major rainstorm. And I'll explain why that's the case in just a minute. But what I want to point out here also is notice the strong convection developing over the southeast and over the Gulf Coast. This shows us that we are dealing with a very dynamic and strong disturbance. And the fact we have very dry air that is developing over parts of Arkansas and parts of southeastern Texas shows us that there's strong lifting ahead of this disturbance and very strong lifting behind this disturbance. The lifting mechanisms in physics has to balance out. So if you have strong lifting, you have to have strong sinking, you have to have strong lifting, and therefore it tells us we are dealing with a very dynamic storm. This is the infrared satellite picture as of 9 a.m. as well. And we have our current primary low pressure sitting over Illinois, and it will move towards the St. Lawrence River Valley and weaken. The new primary low pressure system is starting to get itself organized over parts of Mississippi, and will move towards the Tennessee River Valley this evening and over central Virginia tonight. Now, as this low pressure system is forced to move north towards the eastern Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Valley, moderate to heavy rain will start to push into eastern Pennsylvania late tonight. Could potentially start off as a little bit of snow and sleet over parts of northeastern Pennsylvania, especially the higher elevations, looking maybe an inch or two, if that. You won't notice it by tomorrow morning because everything will be over to rain. This is a very, very brief start to any type of snow and sleet for those locations. Then heavy rain can be expected, and it will build from southwest to northeast throughout the entire northern Mid-Atlantic. If you're in the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan areas, look for light rain to start tomorrow morning, becoming heavy by tomorrow afternoon, and it will become especially heavy after tomorrow evening's rush hour, where rainfall amounts will just be impressive in these locations, anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of rain. Now, over parts of northeastern Pennsylvania and northwestern New Jersey, the higher elevation is actually going to cause what we call orographic lifting, which basically means moisture is being lifted up in the atmosphere because it's moving up a mountain. As a result, rainfall amounts in these locations could become enhanced to over 3 inches of rain. Now, all of this rain is going to cause some serious problems for the portions of northern New Jersey, especially around the Raritan River Basin, basically all of northeastern New Jersey, where you're already having significant flash flooding already. You're going to have 2 to 3 inches of rain, plus the 3+ inches of rain that's setting up to the north of you that's going to have to work down through the rivers as well. So this is a situation that is going to produce some significant flash flooding throughout the entire region, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rain. As this low pressure system is moving north and the rain moves into Connecticut, likely late Thursday night into Friday morning, the rainfall actually will start to weaken because the lifting dynamics will start to weaken as well. As a result, eastern and central Connecticut and eastern Long Island, you'll get your heavy rain, but it won't be nearly as intense as what you're going to see over New York City and points west. The rain will end for the entire northern Mid-Atlantic by Friday afternoon. Expect conditions to dry out over the Philadelphia metropolitan area and eastern Pennsylvania Friday morning, and for New York City metropolitan area by late Friday morning, and then points to the east by Friday afternoon. Behind this rainstorm, though, look out for windy conditions similar to what we saw with the last rainstorm, where as the air mass dries out, we have some air works down from the mid-levels and produce wind gusts up to or exceeding 40 miles per hour. So it's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. But clearly the primary threat here will be this rainfall that will produce excessive flooding throughout the northern mid-Atlantic. After this low pressure leaves, high pressure generally is in control. Now this is for Saturday evening. We do have a weak disturbance that will move through the northern mid-Atlantic on Saturday night into Sunday. It's not very strong and may produce a few isolated showers, but really most locations will remain dry. I don't expect any type of significant impact from this disturbance at all. Pretty much high pressure in control for Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and into early next week. By the middle of next week, again, high pressure is pretty much in control. There is a disturbance that's going to develop off the North Carolina coast. However, when we look at 500 millibars, you can see that there really isn't any blocking in the Atlantic. We have a lot of disturbances coming off of the Pacific Ocean, and that means we're dealing with a very progressive pattern here. So even I think this might be a little bit overdone off the mid-Atlantic coast here. It's probably a much weaker disturbance, and it's probably not going to produce much more than an increase in clouds and maybe a few scattered showers over parts of Cape May, New Jersey. But otherwise, I think this disturbance is going to exit quickly because there's another one right on its tail. And then there's a stronger disturbance entering the west coast. So clearly we're dealing with a progressive pattern. Now, I've gotten a few emails. Apparently someone out there is calling for a potential big snowstorm or some sort of big storm around the 20th. Let me be very clear. There is no threat at all whatsoever for a major winter storm for the northern Mid-Atlantic. And, I'll even go beyond that for the Northeast. What we have here, we have an area of low pressure that's going to be moving through the Great Lakes. And yes, it is rather dynamic. The problem is that it's coming in from the Pacific. Now, let me show you something at 500 millibars. Now, at first glance at this 500 millibar pattern, you say, wow, there's a big ridge over the Rockies and there's a disturbance just diving down through the plains. Not exactly true. What we have here, if you look at the entire pattern and the evolution of the pattern, is that you have a strong disturbance that was over the west coast, over the Pacific, and it moved due east, and because it's a rather dynamic disturbance, it produced a large ridge over the Rockies, and we have another disturbance over the west coast. The problem here, well, there's two problems. One, we have no blocking whatsoever over the western Atlantic. This is a neutral to positive NAO pattern. We have a polar vortex well to the north, around the North Pole, so basically all the cold air is locked up in Canada. And these disturbances are moving from west to east. They're not diving from northwest to southeast. So that means we're looking at a progressive pattern where the air mass is able to warm up ahead of these disturbances, it cools down briefly and warms up again. And these disturbances are pretty much supported by what we call Pacific marine air masses, which means when they move over the Rockies, that air mass becomes rather warm. And as you can see at 850 millibars, you obviously need cold air for snow, and it will be relatively very warm throughout the entire East Coast heading into the 20th of March. And also all the cold Arctic air is locked up in Canada where it belongs in mid to late March. There is only a slight sign of a weak polar air mass dropping into the northern plains where temperatures basically would average in the lower to mid 40s. Not exactly a huge Arctic outbreak. Thank you for visiting NYNJPA Weather as your weather source for the northern Mid-Atlantic. Be very careful with this flash flooding and take the proper precautions ahead of this rainstorm. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. Have an excellent day.